One of these mornings, it won't be long. You'll look for me, and I'll be gone.
Recently, Gloria D. Lane Matlock and her son Adam Matlock performed at Greenfield's First Congregational Church. The performance, hosted by Mass Slavery Apology, Black Lives, Black History, focused on stories, music, and song relating Black history to the events in Black lives today. GCTV spoke with Gloria and Adam about how they feel about their role as African American performers.
A big question that I often hear is like, what's a black man doing playing an Italian instrument, playing Jewish music on an Italian instrument. I play a lot of klezmer as well. So, there's often like questions of, like authenticity or something like that, where, dealing with a lot of different types of music, as well as, music that I grew up with and music that is considered African American. There's sort of a question of that sometimes.
Most of the music that I do, which are the spirituals, I don't have, people do not understand what they mean. They confuse spirituals with gospel music, and that there's a lot of questions about it. And I think sometimes people think, well, these wonderful songs I heard in my childhood, or my grandmother sang to me, or my maid sang to me, or housekeeper, they just thought it was a wonderful song. They didn't know the depth of it. So I think it's just the not knowing, not understanding the meaning of the music, the words. It makes sense if you hear the words and you see when people are running away from the policemen. You see all these males on camera running away, or people trying to get away, black people trying to get away, then you understand. You better run, run, Jimbo, uh-oh. Run, run, Jimbo, uh-oh. Run, run, Jimbo, uh-oh. He's got a pistol in his hand. You better hide in the bushes, oh yeah. Hide in the bushes, oh yeah. Hide in the bushes, oh yeah. He's got a pistol in his hand.
People who want to keep the worlds of entertainment and of social consciousness as completely separate things, and feel as though they can't be entertained or enjoy something with a message like that. And then there are some who can, and it's not really a generational thing. It tends to kind of be a class thing sometimes. Oftentimes, people don't want to be reminded of things that are going on bad.
Adam is currently composing an opera based on the 1921 Black Wall Street massacre that occurred in Greenwood, Oklahoma.
Well, it's very early on in the stages of things, but I think as far as the piece goes, I think I have plans to kind of use the sort of medium of theater and staging and things like that to kind of see what some of the parallels are between this, which happened in 1921, and other things that happened before and afterwards too. Dramatically speaking, it's a very, it's kind of like the story is ripe for being set in that way, because it happened over the course of 2 days. The kind of ramping up of events is just enormous in terms of starting off with like what is now known as kind of like an innocent miscommunication between the black, I think he was a shoe shine, and a white elevator operator, and just from that, over the course of the next 6 hours, it turned into this huge case involving fear of lynching, and then a mob, and then just like the National Guard was called in, and just like it escalated in such a tremendous rate that there's really
And just to find out that it wasn't true. The accusations weren't true.
Well, yeah, there's, as with any of these situations, like there was, the media and hearsay and rumors had such a huge part in the spreading of a story that we now know to be almost completely false, So it was an economically successful, pretty much independent community, so of course, like the white residents of Tulsa kind of saw that as like, here's this kind of like, the term uppity is used a lot to describe black people, and this was very much like one of those situations where it's, they were seeing that as like an affront to the kind of, the standard order of things. But I mean, Tulsa and Oklahoma in general, I mean, the reason why there were so many black residents is because as something that was a territory long before it was a state, it was safe in the antebellum South, for freed slaves to go and sort of start their own communities. And so the independence had as much to do with necessity as it did to do with pride, because white businesses wouldn't deal with them and that kind of thing. So it wasn't just purely a matter of like, we're going to be separationists, by choice. It was it was a necessity.
It is such a sad thing that happened, because that was what was the hope, was that other black communities would establish themselves, because during that time, black people were not allowed in a lot of white stores or banks, and they weren't getting loans for homes, and so they weren't established. It was hard but to know that this happened, and to know that there was a lot of hope there. And this is something that one doesn't learn until, later on in life, that even there was a place called Greenwood, Oklahoma. And it's a really hidden, I know it's a shame for America, but it was really hidden.
The Black Wall Street Massacre is not an isolated incident in American history. Adam explains more.
It may have been one of the more prosperous black communities that was independent, but what happened to it is just a pattern, one in a very long pattern of things. And I think, if you sort of take the pattern into account, there's a lot of questions that can be raised, and they're rather uncomfortable questions about, kind of the American dream, and, about sort of economic prosperity, and of course, the racial issues that this country has had since its founding. So, so there's certainly, there's a lot to dig into, for sure. When you start to look at kind of the history of America as being, kind of a melting pot, ethnically speaking, both in terms of white ethnicities and non-white ethnicities, like there is kind of this key thread of like, you sort of are able to you're able to sort of get your leg up by sort of accepting anti-blackness in a lot of ways. And like, so if, and I think this is understood of like the Irish in Boston, and, kind of Italian immigrants as well, that like you kind of get this to this point of getting your power a little bit when you're able to sort of like cast away your connections with black Americans. And and I think there's sort of theories that that this happens kind of globally in some way or another, but especially in terms of America. I mean, like this is kind of ingrained in the history of it in a lot of ways. And yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, it is really like it's a kind of a false promise. Like you're kind of getting other people to do your dirty work in a lot of ways, so that you can keep your hands clean of racism and what have you.
Privilege is something that you earn, and I think if the enslaved did a lot of building of America, and the white people, masters, plantation owners, benefited from that, they don't deserve a privilege. So we must look at that word a little more closely.
Gloria, who resides locally, currently holds workshops that heal racism and talked about some of the things that offer hope.
I see that there is a lot more diversity here than when I first moved, which was 10 years ago. And I also see that there are groups forming that are anti-racism groups. And I see people listening some more, and I see a lot of hope. I think there will be hope eventually. But I think that there are some issues that we need to address still. Big, huge issues. But I think we'll get there.
If you're interested in holding or participating in a healing racism workshop, you can email Gloria at gmatlock@gmail.com. Her next performance will be at the First Congregational Church in Amherst on Sunday, May 10th at 3 p.m.
Are you lily white? Are you, black Irish? Are you, what are you? Who really cares but you? Basically, that's what it boils down to. If anybody asks you who I